Hi, and welcome. I'm Dr. Jackie Cawley, and I'll be your host for today's conversation on building and strengthening self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is an important and foundational skill to have, both in our personal and in our professional lives. The reason behind it is because studies have shown that higher levels of self-awareness bring people more confidence, allow them to be more creative, have better problem solving and decision making skills, and it's a skill that's directly related to things like emotional intelligence, empathy, and also compassion. Compassion for self, compassion for other people. Now, when we dig into what is truly meant by self-awareness, it's getting to know yourself deeply, knowing your authentic self. And that can be pretty easy to start with when we think about components of it like understanding our values and clarifying them, really knowing what our strengths are and areas of opportunity for future development are, what motivates us, what's important to us, what our passions are. Those are things that we're pretty used to looking at for ourselves, right? The other aspects of building self-awareness really have to do with understanding and being able to name your emotions and to manage them better. Because if you're more aware of them, you can name them, then you can manage them. Why is it important to manage them? Because you impact other people, and how you're perceived by others can impact your effectiveness, both in your personal and in your workplace, personal life and in your workplace, rather. And so it's really, truly important to understand your emotions and be able to understand their impacts on other people, because if you adjust or modify your behaviors, your emotions, your actions, how you're being perceived, you can get more out of those meetings, build better relationships, and also be able to effectively communicate a lot better. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those specific impacts in the workplace in just a few minutes. Now, one thing that I found very interesting is that when working adults were surveyed, only 10 to 15% of them actually met self-awareness based on criteria. And this was the thing that surprised me, because that means 85 to 90% of us are walking around not truly self-aware. And when I thought about that, because I knew it was true for myself after I did a lot more building of my self-awareness over this past year, I kind of believe it has two components to cause. One would be that when you're getting to know yourself and understanding your impacts on others, understand how others perceive you, you have to look really holistically at yourself. So you're not just looking at all the bright, shiny parts of you and all your strengths and all the value you bring. You also have to look at your shadow side, right? So you have your shiny side, you have your shadow side. Now, the shadow side is important for you to accept and embrace, as well as all the positive, shiny things are about you, because the aspects of your shadow side make you who you are. You can't run and hide from them. And the shadow side is the areas of behaviors or actions or negative self-talk, the things that we think about that we don't want to necessarily share with others, that we might have some fears or insecurities around sharing with others, that we may even feel shame about. So I know that this was true for me, and being able to embrace and accept the shadow side of me along with everything that I bring to the world and to the table was a bit of a struggle at first, and it certainly felt uncomfortable. And my guidance to you is, in this work, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because otherwise you're not going to really understand and be able to embrace your true authentic self. And if you can't see it, if you can't understand it, you can't manage it, right? You can't do anything about it in order to get better impacts and results in your personal life and at the workplace. Let's talk a little bit about an example, and I'll give you myself as an example. I thought I was really self-aware when I started out in my career. I'm a family physician, right? So working with patients, I felt very comfortable in working with people from a level of emotional intelligence, from empathy, for compassion, being able to really build relationships with my patients. And it was such a privilege and honor for me, because they would share a lot with me and they trusted me with their health and their well-being. and caring for them. I thought my self-awareness was pretty good because I did have a pretty high level of emotional intelligence and empathy. Now, when I started to truly look into it, I realized that, yeah, I understood my values and I tried to work in a place that was aligned with them, live in alignment with my values. I understood my passions and my reason for being. I understood my strengths. I was pretty clear on a lot of the opportunities that I still had. And I was pretty good at, knowing my emotions and being able to name them. My management of them, I think I didn't manage them as well as I could now. So I remember being a young physician leader and sitting at tables with administrators where they would be listening to a presentation on a possible program or a piece of equipment, whatever it is that we would happen to bring at the table. So when I brought those things forward, I thought to myself, I'm a smart person, I'm a doctor, this is a great clinical program, it's going to improve people's lives. We really need to do this, and the administrators are obviously going to understand it as soon as I present it to them. And so I would come to the table all excited and my soapbox and telling them all the wonderful things that I had, as far as my request and why they should grant the request and give me the money and the time and the space to implement it. What I didn't always understand is that what I was bringing forward and what I thought was important really wasn't what they needed to hear from me. What they really needed was to understand if I understood the impacts of my program, both the positives and the cons. And then if I really truly understood what the return on investment would be, had I looked at where it might be difficult to implement, they just really wanted a much more balanced approach to what I was presenting to them, rather than my being on a soapbox and just lifting my fist and saying, you should do this for us because it's good for patient care. I learned my lesson, and I did realize that I had to change my approach to make sure that I understood how they were perceiving me and how my words mattered, my emotions mattered, my emotions mattered, and my behaviors mattered when I was presenting to other people in order to help influence them to take a risk and join me on implementing and starting and developing a new program. It took a little while, but I figured it out. The other thing that I thought I was really self-aware was with my impacts to my family. I didn't always necessarily understand how some of my behaviors were impacting them. And going deep into that was it was hard. I'll say it was a struggle because being able to embrace and accept those shadow tendencies can be a little bit difficult. But once you do that and you can see where your behavior is making an impact on somebody in a negative way, you can adjust it and modify that behavior and get very different results and be perceived in a very different way. So over the years, I've learned to become more self-aware. I think I was doing it in a much better way in my professional life because I was paying attention to it in my professional life more than I was in my personal life. And over this last year, I've recognized the importance of really thinking about myself and being self-aware much more deeply, authentically, and holistically, so that I'm bringing my best self forward and being able to work with others, whether it's at home or in the workplace, in ways that are effective in both places. Self-awareness, it's really an important skill to have. We can all do better with it. And if you look at the criteria, not all of us are meeting that. And again, I think it goes back to being able to be open, accepting, and curious about our shadow sides, and then also being willing to manage, adjust, or modify how we're coming to a table, a meeting, our personal, our professional lives on any given day. Join us for the next discussion on building and strengthening self-awareness, where we'll talk about internal versus external self-awareness and what are some of the basic things that we can do in our daily lives in order to enhance our self-awareness. Talk to you soon.